Hello, my name is Susan Hawthorne, and I'm the publisher at Spinifex Press in Australia and the author of Bibliodiversity, a manifesto for independent publishing, which was published in 2014. I begin with an acknowledgement of country. I respectfully acknowledge the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their custodianship of the lands and waterways. Spinifex offices are located on Jiru, Bunurong, Wadawurrung, Eora and Noongar country. I also acknowledge the many women throughout history who have fought for women's freedom and the freedom of lesbians, often at the cost of their lives. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this session. I'm sorry that I'm coming to you on video instead of in person, but a 3 a.m. starting time is not possible, and tomorrow I have to do a very long drive. I began thinking about bibliodiversity in 2007 when Spinifex Press joined the International Alliance of Independent Publishers. It immediately struck a chord because I had spent around 15 years writing about biodiversity and the critical importance it has in keeping ecological areas healthy. Biodiversity is a system that is both complex and self-sustaining. I see bibliodiversity as an analogy of biodiversity. If you have biodiversity in an ecological system, then you have dynamic balance. All the plants and animals, rocks, waters, the sky, etc., are more likely to survive. Those things don't survive if there's an ecological crisis or if some plant or animal comes to dominate the environment. The same is true for culture. Cultures can thrive while a wide range of people have a voice, and the playing field is tipped not too steeply in favour of just one group or even a small number of groups who might fight over the highest market share. In the publishing world, there are enormous corporates who drive much of the industry. In the English language world, you have the US publishers and the UK publishers, big multinational conglomerates. And there are really only 6 publishers in this context who matter, because the rest are just small fry. A few medium ones in between, but it's the smaller and independent publishers who produce a lot of groundbreaking work. We produce risky work. They produce work that is not a guaranteed bestseller, and this is where the long-lasting literatures really come from. Up against these publishers, we at Spinifex Press are tiny, publishing mostly 10 books a year. Unlike the large multinationals, our books have a long shelf life, in part because we keep them as frontlist books for at least 3 years, and older titles cycle through to the front as well. Spinifex Press is a radical feminist press, and we are now in our 31st year of publishing. We say of ourselves that we publish innovative and controversial feminist books with an optimistic edge. Ever since we started, we have published a huge diversity of writers from Indigenous Australia, as well as Indigenous writers from the Pacific and North America, from Asia, Africa and the Middle East, as well as writers from Europe and the Americas, both North and South. Our fiction and poetry is often experimental or literary, though we also have titles that teeter at the edge of the mainstream. But as feminism moves from being popular to unpopular, back to popular, so does interest in our authors and their books. Our non-fiction takes up subject areas that are critical within the women's liberation movement, such as transgenerational trauma resulting from colonisation, eco-feminist critiques, especially of globalisation, well-argued books about the dire consequences for women of pornography, prostitution, and more recently, the advent of sex dolls and robots. We are critical of how billionaires fund what they want to see happen, such as undermining lesbian and feminist activism and overfunding the transgender lobby, or the ways in which these same billionaires work against an ecological future, a future in which climate change eases. It has clearly started, but we need to pull it back now. Bibliodiversity is a view from below. Like old trees in the right soil, the roots of culture are deep. Time creates a rich seam of knowledge, and if a tree cannot tap into this soil of knowledge, it will die for lack of nutrients. But the tree is not alone. It is interdependent with a host of organisms and plants around it. Bibliodiversity thrives when independent publishers reach into that deep cultural knowledge. Independent publishers resist the forces of colonisation, monocultures, and homogenisation. I like to think of our publishing house as an example of organic publishing. Just as organic farming has its best result on limited acreage, so too the most interesting and thought-provoking books frequently begin their lives with independent publishers who are prepared to take the risk on something new or an unknown author. The grass after which Spinifex is named is a desert grass that helps to hold the earth together. It grows in circles, and at a distance it looks soft, but up close it's prickly. One of the important features of bibliodiversity is the intention to change society, to increase the range of voices available in the cultural mix, because the original Chilean publishers who invented the word bibliodiversity had in mind a transformative role for bibliodiversity. That is also what I want to see continued. Some publishers who don't agree with the idea of bibliodiversity might say, look, we have all these publishers from the left and the right. We have such diversity in our market. For me, that is not enough. The publishers whom I believe are having a great impact are those who are prepared to publish critiques of the mainstream, not just join it. There are many such independent publishers around the world. Those of you on this panel are no doubt doing that. These independent publishers are the ones whose books will survive for more than 6 months on the shelf. Indeed, they are likely to speak to future generations. This takes a concern for the content. It's not just faddish, and the mindset of the publisher to take on books that push boundaries, that make readers think in new ways, that challenge long-held assumptions. Thank you for the chance to speak today. I look forward to listening to you.